everybody. Welcome to Curry and Mitchell. From Watts to Brooklyn, and dare I say all points in between and beyond. I'm Sheldon Curry, along with my good friend James Mitchell, and once again we're going to discuss a number of topics in the sports world, and politics, and anything else that fits our fancy. So thanks for joining us. What's up, brother? What's up? What's up?
Everything's good. Everything's good. I think winter has finally hit in around here. Yeah, temperatures in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds nippy.
Yeah, it is that. It is that. Things are good. Things are good.
Good, good. Same here on the West Coast. Mild weather. Not as nippy, but we getting nippy, if that's a word.
Right.
Yeah, we starting to dip into the low 50s, high 40s. So.
Oh man, that's cold out
That's
there.
cold, man. That's polar bear weather for us. You know that.
That's right. Absolutely.
In your time out here. All right, man. Well, let's start the show. Do a little NFL. I guess NFL recap. I'll throw this one at you and let you get the first go. That game, the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings, an overtime game. At the end of the day, Minnesota prevailed. What you think?
It's a crazy game. We saw Jefferson continue to make Cousins look good.
Oh, man.
He put on quite a show. That guy's tremendous, man. I mean, some catches he made is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. But it was a very exciting game, filled with a little bit of everything. You know, I mean, I'm always very critical of a lot of play calls and stuff like that. So I'm always frustrated. And I'm harping on this almost every week. I see when teams get close to the goal line, first and goal from the 5 and stuff like that, and right away they go to throwing the ball. And Minnesota was guilty of that a couple of times, and I can't remember if they eventually scored or not. They probably did because score so high. But it just frustrates me. You get that close, you first goal from the 5, and Dalvin Cook in your backfield.
There you go.
He doesn't touch the ball. That's crazy. You know, I don't understand it. But they keep doing it over and over and over again. But, it didn't hurt them in the end this time. But again, a very exciting game. As I said earlier in the week, Allen, it looks like he's reverting to his old self again. He's a very talented quarterback. He's one of those guys who, in crucial moments in tight games, makes big mistakes, and it cost him this time again. So, what else can I say about that?
Yeah, kind of jumping in there at Allen, you're right. You characterize him right on time. A lot of talent, very good ball player. Like watching him play, and as you know, at that position, I want to see guys that can make plays. And when things break down, I'm so tired of the guys that everything has to be perfect for them to be successful. And then beyond that, then we got to hear the narratives about how great they are. But at least with a guy like Allen or Mahomes or Lamar or those guys, if things get off script, as they like to say, they can make a play.
Absolutely.
And so that being said, the last 3 weeks, Allen is going to have to step up his game from the last 3 weeks. He's made 6 or 7 turnovers, most of them in key situations. They've lost their last 2 games. And, he threw an egregious interception in overtime when they were driving to at least tie the game. Now, some people might find that a little problematic. So, what is a tie? Well, here's what a tie does. If Buffalo had tied that game, they would be 6-2-1. That means they would still be ahead of 7-3 Miami. And, so if they ended up with the same number of wins, let's say Buffalo ended up 12-4-1 and Miami 12-5, Buffalo would win the division.
Right.
So people always complain about what's the value of a tie. Well, the tie is a half a game better than a loss.
Exactly.
So. And then then the fumble, even though I guess that was the exchange with the center, that was a horrible fumble on the half-inch line when they were trying to run out the clock. Up 4 points, man. That was so. Right. But I want to get back to Justin Jefferson, man. That catch he made on 4th and 18 to keep that drive alive for Minnesota going to eventually get the game into overtime and then to win it. Right. I mean, that was just an incredible catch.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. And the strength he must have in his one hand, because the defensive back had 2 hands on the ball, and for him to come down was just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like like that. That was amazing.
Yeah, so now that being said, Minnesota is showing that, they're for real. You can't be 8-1 in the NFL
Right.
and beat a team like Buffalo. And they also have a win over Miami, though Miami didn't have Tua.
Right.
So I'm not going to hate on a team that's 8-1. But I will say this, Kirk Cousins tried to give it away. And another 2 picks.
Yeah. Right.
One was a horrendous. I don't know what he was looking at. I don't know if it was the second or third quarter. He got under pressure, just threw the ball to his left. And it was horrible, but his team bailed him out. And your point about Dalvin Cook in the red zone, man, did you see his facial expressions after he ran for that 81-yard touchdown? They were down. That was actually the most key play, believe it or not, in that game to me, because they were down 27-10. They were left for dead. It was late in the third quarter, and he bust on that 81-yarder, and they got him back in the game. They got energized. But when you saw his face on the sideline, he almost had this look of, give me the damn ball.
Right. I imagine he feels that way. Because I can see how he would.
Because I think at the point he got that touchdown, it was only his 7th or 8th carry in the game. They were late in the third quarter.
Right.
And so it just kind of shows you again, man, that this pass-centric stuff because of these liberal rules. But the game is not a better game, man.
No, it's not. It's not, and it costs you more times than it works in your favor, I think. Yeah. And especially in key games when you're playing against a worthy opponent. And with that segue, I'll turn to the Cowboys and the Packers. It's really funny. I heard just the other day, I heard that Stephen A. Smith, who likes to give it to the Cowboys, but he was going off and saying apparently that he thought that Dak Prescott was the weak link for the Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. Now, my take is that Kellen Moore is the weak link for the Dallas Cowboys. That's their offensive coordinator. Because his play calling is horrendous. To go into that game, the way the Cowboys have been playing, run-centric offense, play good defense, and they had a nice winning streak going. Then he comes into the game against the Packers, and he has, even though they did run the ball successfully, Pollard ran for over 100 yards, like 115 yards. But he had Zach Prescott threw 42 passes in that game.
Actually, I think he threw more than that. Not to
Maybe
correct you, 46, something like that. Yeah. So to your point, yes.
Yeah. Over 40 times he threw the ball, and and then he's running the ball successfully with Pollard. He had this young man named Davis, who I didn't know was on the roster, number 34. He ran maybe 4 or 5 times, but every time he touched the ball, so he got 7, 8, 9 yards. Every time he ran, they didn't use him enough, in my opinion. But then the turnovers and something like that just killed the Cowboys. But that was a game that the Cowboys should have won easily, and they just squandered that. And that's really disappointing. And even though the young man had quite a game for the Packers, Watson, he had a breakout game, they say, and what he did, he scored 3 touchdowns. But that was just a frustrating game for me to watch. Because the Cowboys know they should have lost that game. And as a matter of fact, it's the first time they've lost a game going into the third quarter with a 2-touchdown lead. Their record had been 182-0, and now it's 182-1. So it gets back to me, this Kellen Moore and his pass-centric offense is just driving me crazy. I don't understand it. He does it over and over again, especially after coming off the way they had been playing. It makes to go away from that plan. Just doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. The one thing I've been trying to get my hands around, and the only thing that begins to make it's a reason why, even though it still doesn't make sense to me, and that is so many of these offensive coordinators, they get these high-priced quarterbacks, and I think they have to, be very pass-centric. And, last year Dallas led the NFL in scoring and I think in total offense. And when I really think about that, a lot of the kudos end up going to the coordinators when they have a top defense or a top offense. So even though it doesn't make sense that that's why you would do that, the idea is to win the games.
Right.
And whatever is the best way you can, like what Green Bay did in that game, Rodgers threw 20 passes total.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, and
they ran the ball down their throat.
And they ran the ball down their throat with Dylan and Aaron Jones. And
that's right.
And for all the negative lack of leadership issues and poor intangibles that Rodgers has, he can throw the ball. So when you see a team like that pass it only 20 times and it helps them lead to victory, it just kind of reinforces what we're talking about.
Exactly.
So I'm with you on this thing with Dallas, man. It's the good trying to be. And matter of fact, when Dak's reputation was ascending his first 2 or 3 years, what were they? A run-centric team with Zeke.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
exactly.
You know, matter of fact, their only playoff win came during that little period.
Right.
Where, you know, so I'm with you, man. And you know, I don't know, again, we talk about being dinosaurs, pass. But I'm yet to understand, other than the marketing aspect of it and the fact that everybody can wager either through gambling or fantasy. Because that's why the ratings are so high, because people are watching the games because they have a something invested in it.
Right.
But in terms of the pure game, I don't see what's so exciting about a game that's disadvantages the defense.
Exactly.
You know, when there was a good cat and mouse, and back in the day, if you really had a better offense than that defense, I mean, if you had a good offense, a good defense, it was about strategy, you know, still fewer turnovers, blocking, tackling, executing. And now it's like, with rare exception, man, a team gets the ball with a minute to go, it's almost like they all automatically going to go down the field. And then when you throw in the fact that they will always call pass interference, it just blows me away. And then I think about what we're losing. And I love to see the great wide receivers, but think about the game today. Where are the Gale Sayerses and the O.J. Simpsons and the Jim Browns and the Eric Dickersons and the Tony Dorsey? I mean, we got some great backs like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. McCaffrey can scoot and scat, and there, you know, the guy in Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, there's some good backs, and I'm probably leaving out a couple, but the game used to, you know, feature these guys, and you would love watching them. Barry Sanders and
that's true.
You know, and so we're losing that. And then the last thing I'll say, not to run this to death, I know they say it's for safety reason, but they've all but eliminated the kickoff return.
Yeah.
Man, Billy White Shoes Johnson, what was the kid's name? Not kid, he played Hall, that played with Kansas City years ago, that returned 8 or 9 career kickoffs. The guy that played for Chicago was on the Hall of Fame ballot.
I can't remember his name.
Great returner. Man, those are all parts of the game you love watching.
That's true.
Deion Sanders, when he would return punts with Atlanta, you know. They have just eliminated these aspects of the game so they can put the ball in these statuesque, standstill guys. You know, and unless they're Josh Allen, who are not that way, the brothers, they got to stay in the pocket. They got to stay in the pocket. Then you look at Justin Fields and what he's doing when you just let him go.
Oh, man.
It's a different game, man. It's more exciting, everything.
It is.
You know, so I'm so sick of this modern day NFL, man. And I'm going to tell you, if it wasn't for gambling and fantasy football, I wonder how popular it really would be.
That's a good point.
I wonder how popular would it really be. But anyway, that's my rant. I didn't even have any of that as a note. I just
right.
You know, you triggered something in me, man.
But it's so true. I agree with you. It's a different game. And I barely watch it. It's like I don't watch it like I used to. There was a time when I wouldn't miss an NFL game. I don't care who was playing. You know. So to your point, it was a lot more exciting to me anyway. When he used to play. But moving on, last night. I don't want to jump off Sunday so quickly, but
no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Eagles and the Commanders in my mind right now. And I think I mentioned to you earlier in the day yesterday, I just had a feeling. I looked at that game. I looked at the schedule. I think the Commanders might beat these guys tonight. I just had that feeling for some reason, and it turned out that way. And they did it the old-fashioned way. They dominated the ball.
They did.
They had the ball for 40 minutes and to 20 for the Eagles, and then the turnovers by the Eagles. You know, just kind of doomed them. But I think it was one of those they call it trap game, where you kind of go in there thinking that, we can handle these guys and maybe not pay as much attention to detail early on, and then you get in the hole, So did not take anything from the Commanders. If they played, had a good strategy and they stuck to it and it worked. So, but I don't think that really hurts the Eagles a lot. I think it might even help them in some levels, to be more acute going forward.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they lost their first game on November 14th, when you lose your first game in the middle of November, that's not bad.
Not bad at all.
And I agree with you. Everything you said was right on point. The Commanders dominated them physically. And I'm never going to excuse a team, but it really looked like Philadelphia. They looked like they were overconfident, particularly after they jumped ahead 14-7. They got up, they scored first, Washington tied it, then Philly came down, and it just looked like par for the course. And then that's when Washington started pounding them. They ran the ball 49 times.
Yeah.
And they didn't average a lot of yards per carry. If I recall, I took a glance. I think Robinson ran the ball 28 times for like 3.1 yards a pop. And Gibson was like 14 for 44. It's about 3.1 yards a pop. But what it shows you, the time of possession, wearing a team down, making a couple of the quarterback Heineke made a couple of good passes here and there, and there's the ball game. And the other thing, Philly's run defense has been really hurt without that rookie from Georgia, Jordan Davis.
Yeah, they missed that terribly.
Yeah, I mean it was really noticeable. So I know they need to get him back. And then the other thing with the turnovers. They had the fourth turnovers when they was doing all that lateral, and after the clock had run out, it resulted in a touchdown for Washington to make the score be 32-21. But the three turnovers were the difference in the game, and particularly two of them as they were driving. One on the bomb, the guy got tackled around the 10-yard line or something. They were driving to go ahead. So, everything you said is right. It's probably going to be good for them. They won't have that undefeated pressure as the season progresses, and God forbid get in the playoffs. Right. But I think you're right. In Philly, them and Minnesota are tied with the best record in the game. But Philly has a tiebreaker over Minnesota.
Right.
So they're still right now in terms of the order of the playoffs. If it was today, they would still get the bye. And so I'm with you there. Hey, real quickly, going back to Dallas, the marquee game in the NFL next week is Dallas at Minnesota.
Right.
And before Dallas got tripped up by Green Bay, there was a lot of discussion about that was going to be the game that was going to prove whether or not Minnesota was for real or not. Now, I say that because prior to the Buffalo game, most people thought Buffalo would handle them easily.
True.
But then at least in the NFC, the Dallas-Minnesota game would kind of let us know if Minnesota was for real, at least on the NFC side. But then, of course, Minnesota went in and beat Buffalo.
Right.
So that's going to be a big game for both teams.
That's true. So now I guess the question people asking is Dallas for real?
Yeah.
Once again. And plus, given their defense having trouble stopping the run, if Minnesota goes out there, does what they need to do and feed Dalvin Cook all day long, it might be a long day for Dallas.
That's a good point. That is a really good point. Yeah. Take something out of Green Bay's playbook.
That's right. If they have any sense, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, so that'll be a good game, and it's clearly the NFL's marquee game this week.
Right.
So,
right.
Before we leave the NFL, I want to make another point. Now that the dust is starting to settle, now we're truly past the halfway point. Because, with this 17-game schedule and the byes and all that. But now we just concluded Week 10. And so every team in the league has played 9 or 10 games. So that means every team has played more games than they have left.
Right.
And so going into clearly now the second half of the season, to me, Kansas City looks like the class. Now, I'm not saying that they are heads and shoulders above everybody else, but they look really good. And as we were speaking off the air, I came across some information the other day that said that Kansas City's first 8 games were against teams that had winning records last year. That's the first time in NFL history a team has played a schedule like that the following season. And for them to go 6-2 in those games, and of course they added a 7th win this past weekend, and the schedule gets a little easier, at least record wise. Man, they who knows where they might end up. What you think?
They're sitting in a good position, no question about that. And as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, and it doesn't matter who his receivers are, it appears.
Yeah, you're right.
They're on top of the game, man. I agree with you. I think Kansas City is one of the top 2 teams. I think Buffalo's still right there, and we'll see about Minnesota. Minnesota's still iffy, and the only reason I'm questioning Minnesota's viability is because of Kirk Cousins. I don't have a lot of faith in him. He's been playing all right, but his teammates have been bailing him out a lot more than he's been bailing them out. So
yeah, and I think your hesitancy on him is legitimate because he's one of those guys that when you're on those 8-8, 8-9, 7-10 teams, not a lot of big games. He puts up a lot of nice stats.
Right, he does.
But he's been known for not playing well against good teams or in prime time. So he has a chance to change that. So we will see, to be fair to him.
That's true. That's true.
And I guess I think the LA Rams are dead.
It looks that way. Yeah, it looks that
way.
They
look horrible.
They do. And they just lost Cooper Kupp for about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not going to help. He's having surgery, I think. Yeah, that's not going to help them at all because they've been thin anyway.
They have been thin, and they're 3-6. They're going in the wrong direction.
Absolutely.
And their offense is like one of the worst in the league, believe it or not. And then it's putting a lot of pressure on their defense because you're starting to see cracks in the defense now.
That's right.
So
I think they're through.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think they're through.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I think they may not be mathematically through, but I think that because the last time I looked, if the playoffs were held today, in the 7th seed, the final spot is held by Frisco at 5-4, and they 2 games behind them, and so and San Francisco's getting healthier, so I don't know. I don't see it for. I don't see it.
I don't think the Seahawks are going away.
I don't either. But I'm just talking about San Francisco is the closest to the 3-6 Rams.
Right.
Even though San Francisco's only a game behind Seattle, but and if for some reason one thinks that Frisco will overtake Seattle, the Rams are 3 games behind Seattle.
Exactly.
So with 8 games to play, so. Yeah, I'm with you there. I did hear one other thing before we came on the air. Dallas Goedert is out. He got hurt. He's going to be out for several weeks. The tight end for Philly.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know what that'll mean long term, but he's out the next few weeks. So, but that's the NFL, man. A lot of key injuries. A lot of key injuries, man.
That's true.
A lot of key injuries.
And speaking of the Seahawks, as I mentioned, isn't it interesting how the Bucs defense stifled them on the running game, and it really won the game, but all of a sudden, Tom Brady brings the Bucs back again. It never ends, man. I tell you. He played all right. They overlooked that interception he threw that kept Seahawks in the game, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those games. But Geno's still playing well, and I'm really happy about that. He played a good game.
Well, like as we say every time we talk about Geno, everybody's waiting for him to fall off the ladder.
Exactly.
And
he's not coming off.
He's not, man. I think, and it makes sense when here's a guy who was a 2nd round pick.
Right.
So that means he had value when he came out. He finally got on the team, got some talent, and he's the guy. And you're seeing it.
Yeah.
You're seeing it. I mean, he's really throwing that ball, and I think if if Seattle hangs in there with him with the talent they're putting around him and the young players that are gonna hopefully evolve. If you're a Seattle fan, you gotta like where you're going, and he's not an old guy. I mean,
not at all. No,
and given how who knows what he may end up doing.
That's true. That's true.
So, and what I find problematic about this is that folks act like he's the first quarterback in history that started off, didn't have a stellar first few years. I mean, there have been other guys like that. Rich Gannon was like that. He didn't play a lot early in his career, and when he played, he didn't play that well. And he ended up winning an MVP one year. Whether I thought he deserved it or not is not the point.
Right. Yeah, that's all subject.
But I mean, it's been a couple other guys that have been like that in the last 20, 30 years where, they get an opportunity and they go and they end up playing and starting and playing pretty well for 6, 7 years. So
That's right. Yeah, go Gino.
Yeah, so we'll see. And then my last NFL take will be I'm interested to see what Baltimore does coming off this break because pretty much like Kansas City, they played a pretty tough first half of if you look at the records of the present day of this year's teams.
Right.
Everybody in the AFC East, for instance, has winning records, and Baltimore's played all 4 of them. And then, they've also played the New York Giants, who have a winning record, and I think one other team. So they play, Cincinnati. So they 6 or 7 of their games against teams that have winning record, and they're 6-3, and they blew games. So their schedule gets a little better, and they're getting a little healthier.
That's the key thing for them, yeah.
That is the key thing for them, yeah.
Staying healthy.
Yeah. And as we said, I think the last time we spoke, Bateman is out for the year. So,
right.
And as you mentioned, even though Dobbins was out for a handful of games, he may be out for the year too.
That's true.
So it never ends for them.
No, it doesn't seem to.
Okay.
Doesn't seem.
Well, I want to pivot to the World Series. I want to do a brief World Series recap.
Okay.
I guess today's November the 15th. I guess the World Series ended, 9-10 days ago maybe.
Right.
But it ended since we were last on the air. And the Houston Astros beat the Philadelphia Phillies in 6 games. And you got to give Houston a lot of credit because
Absolutely.
They lost game 1 at home.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Philly was riding high because Philly was bludgeoning everybody on their way.
That's true.
And they came from behind. Houston lost the 5-run lead in game 1. So it would be easy to say, oh, man, here we go. Mm-hmm. And so Framber Valdez pitched a really good game and got them back in the series. And then when Houston goes to Philly, Philly wins game 3. And most of the pundits, and I know I heard a few of them, felt that series effectively was over.
Right.
They felt like a lot of people felt like it wasn't going back to Houston.
That's true.
And then Javier came and threw the first 6 innings of a combined no-hitter to get them back in the series. And then Houston won game 5, forced it back to Philly. Framber Valdez won game 6. So I want to give kudos to Houston, but the biggest kudo goes to Dusty Baker.
I hear you.
Because, and I'm going to say it on the air, there were a number of people, but the one I'm going to cite, and I don't like citing folk because, because even me and you could make a mistake here and there, and we don't always want to be. But I was listening to Jim Bowden on one of the stations after game 3, and he was ripping Dusty, talking about how he stayed with McCullers too long, and that's what he's always done, and he has an inability to adjust, and, this series is over. And I mean, and it would have been, I won't say okay, but acceptable if he was just reporting what he thought. Right. But he had some venom in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear it. It was dripping like, what did Dusty do to you?
Right.
And after I thought about it, they probably did cross paths because Dusty was once a manager of the Reds and Bowden was once a general manager there. Now, I don't know if they were there at the same time, but who knows?
Right.
And after that, man, Houston won the last 3 games. So I wonder, I'd be interested to see what Bowden thought after that, particularly how astutely Dusty handled his bullpen because it would have been very easy for him to let Javier continue in that game on a no-hitter.
That's true.
And what did Dusty say after the game? He said, that because Javier hadn't pitched much in the last month, he'd given us what we needed. I have a lot of faith in my pen. And just in case, if we have to bring him back in Game 7, he'll be ready. So he's never given credit for his strategic moves and his proactive moves, And so, and I'm so happy for him now because now he has the title, the 3 World Series appearances, only manager to take 5 different teams to the postseason. He's 8th or 9th all-time in career wins, and he's up for the Hall of Fame not this December, but December 2023. And if he doesn't get in, they need to give them, I don't know, what do you call those breathalyzer tests?
Right. Exactly. I agree with you. I mean, couldn't be more happy for Dusty. He's a great person and a great manager. And he's an outstanding ball player in his day.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because, you know, what gets lost is not only has he had a great managerial career, but like you say, he was an outstanding ball player. When you put the two together, outside of the all-time great players, there are very few people have had the career that Dusty Baker's had.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a no question Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean he is, you know, and so I'm so happy. And then the other thing that I just get upset about is back to the Bowdens of the world and the naysayers of the world. Right. If he was anybody else, they will be telling you about the guys that he doesn't have anymore. Now listen to these 3 players that Houston hasn't had for the last couple of years. Well, 2 of them for the last 2 or 3, and 1 since this championship was won without Carlos Correa, an all-star shortstop,
right?
George Springer, an all-star outfielder,
right,
and Garrett Cole, who the Yankees signed for $300 million.
How about that?
Think about that.
How about that?
These were all the players on the previous Houston team that Dusty doesn't have. Now, he did have Correa last year, admittedly, but the other 2 have been gone 2 or 3 seasons.
That's true.
Now, think about that for a minute. I'm not talking about just players. And I have not heard anybody mention that.
No. And they won't.
You know.
It doesn't fit the narrative. No.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the narrative. That's right. Yeah.
That's all it is.
Because they want you to think all Dusty is a happy-go-lucky,
right?
You know, and
chewing on the toothpick.
Chewing on the toothpick and looking at his wristbands.
Exactly.
You know, so, but then when you get to his players, they all love him. And I'll never forget what Bryce Harper said when he was in Washington. Bryce Harper said he was the best manager I've ever played for.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
so.
The question is to his character, his ability.
Yeah, and his class. So I'm really happy.
Absolutely.
And even though I'm not, I think Jeremy Pena is a hell of a young shortstop. He filled in very admirably. I shouldn't even say filled in. He replaced Correa.
Right.
And he was the MVP. He played very well in the postseason.
Yeah. Key hits.
Yeah, all key hits, good defense.
Right.
Yeah. But I want to throw a shout out to Framber Valdez because he was the one that turned the series around with that performance in Game 2 when they were down 1-0, and then he pitched his butt off in Game 6. So I wanted to send him a kudo. And the last thing is my modern day McCovey started with that 3-run bomb in the 6th inning. Yordan Alvarez, boy, goodness.
Huge.
You know, and I know he struggled a little bit, but boy, he had a bomb, boy.
He came up big when he needed him.
He did. So, and then I guess Dusty has but Dusty's re-signed for 1 more year.
Right.
Some people find that strange, but I can kind of see that from Dusty's perspective because he'll be 70.
Sure, at his age.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now the biggest news out of Houston though is that the GM is not coming back.
I know, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. Yeah. That'd be interesting to see what happened.
Yeah, there's some scuttlebutt that the owner really wants to bring back the previous GM.
Oh, okay.
You know, now that suspension and all that stuff is over with.
And the cloud is over.
Because what's his name? Jeff Ludnow, I believe his name was. I think I'm saying that right. And that Jeff Lunow. And that he's given a lot of credit for building the Houston team back in the mid-2010s. And so, now I don't know, that's just a scuttlebutt. But it's interesting that Click is out after 2 or 3 years as GM. So he was only offered a 1-year deal, and he felt that was unacceptable. So he's walking.
Okay.
Yeah. So, man, anything else on the horizon? I got a couple of things, but just want to throw it out at you. You got anything you want to throw in here?
A quick step back to the football for just
Oh,
a
okay,
second.
good. Let's go.
Justin Fields, I cannot ignore what he's been doing. Just unbelievable play from him. He's setting all kind of records, seems like every week. He does something more fantastic than the week before. But he's running and passing. I'm just really happy that he's being able to show his talents, and hopefully they'll get some help for him next year, protect him so he doesn't get beat up so much. But he's just putting on quite a show, and he's looking like the class of the field of the draftees of the year he came out of school, and making a lot of people look bad, but having picked up quarterbacks ahead of him, I'm just happy for him. I've always believed in his talent, and he's showing people what he can do. But that's about it on the football level.
And you're saying a lot, man, because that's the same guy that, same draft that Trevor Lawrence came out in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you remember, he played against Trevor Lawrence twice.
Yes.
Head-to-head twice. And unfortunately, both times he was injured when he played. But he outplayed him both times. If you go back and look at those games, even though he was injured, he showed he was a better player to me anyway. And but I always believed in his talent. Just watching him at Ohio State, he convinced me. So I'm not surprised at what he's doing. I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
But people have been on this case early on, and blaming them for a stupid offense that they were running and no talent, around them. So, but he's quite a young man. I hope he stays healthy.
Yeah, well, like some astute people who observe this new breed of player, if that's the proper term, is that people got to get used to it. Looks different. See, they're so used to certain things looking a certain way,
Right.
and so and that's what is really important there. I wanna stay in football, but I want to talk real briefly about an old fantastic wide receiver. Now, as you know, we try to do that from time to time and talk about somebody back from the day. And I try to use a marker, some anniversary, like a 50-year mark or something. And that person is Paul Warfield. Outstanding wide receiver, Cleveland Browns, Miami Dolphins in the 60s and 70s. He was on that 17-0, including the playoffs, Miami Dolphin team in 72. He turns 80 years old this month.
Oh, okay.
And this is going to be blasphemous, and I'm going to separate the eras because 1978 saw the establishment of the beginning of the new liberal passing rules in the NFL, and passing statistics started going through the roof, and it's not stopped, basically. And Paul Warfield played from 1964 to 77. 13 of those 14 seasons were in the NFL. He played a year in the old USFL. And his career, he averaged 20 yards a catch for over 400 receptions, 85 touchdowns, 8 times Pro Bowler, 3-time NFL champ. He won 2 Super Bowls with Miami, and then he was on the NFL championship team with the Cleveland Browns in 1964 before there was a Super Bowl. He played with Jim Brown. And I believe he's the greatest receiver, at least before Jerry Rice. Now, some people say it was Don Hudson, the old Green Bay Packer wide receiver from the 30s and the 40s, but I say it's Paul Warfield.
I couldn't argue with that.
And then the other thing with the Miami Dolphins, even though you talking about run centric, they had a Super Bowl with Bob Greasy threw 7 passes and won the game. But Warfield was so good that in the 2 Super Bowl runs, he averaged 21 and 22 yards a catch in the Super Bowls. I mean, in the playoff runs. And so every time they needed a big play, whether it's a touchdown or key first down, it was Paul Warfield.
He was tremendous.
And I can't even imagine him playing today.
With these liberal rules, oh man.
Can you imagine?
Be no stopping him. He was playing back when they were bludgeoning wide receivers back in those days.
I mean, I just can't imagine it. So,
he was great. He was outstanding. It was a place to watch his career.
So I want to give him a shout out.
Absolutely, happy birthday. Happy
birthday. So
yes, sir.
Look like I got my grandson visiting, so he might get on the air. What's going on, man? All right. So, any other quick hits or any other thing you want to talk about? You want to talk about the midterm elections?
But first we get to that, I definitely want to have a few comments about the midterm.
Okay.
I want to mention a little bit of the college footballs.
Okay.
It's coming down to the wire now in terms of this playoff picture. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned Mr. Drake May of the University of North Carolina.
Yeah, you put him on the map.
Young quarterback, redshirt freshman. Now everybody's starting to talk about him. He's tremendous. He's just off the chart. I'll just read some of his statistics to you. He's thrown for 3,412 yards, 34 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Wow.
All right. He's they played the last game. They beat Wake Forest, I think it was, 36-34. He threw for 448 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ran for 71 yards. He's had more than 300 yards passing in the game 7 times, and he's rushed for 584 yards total rushing so far this year. Now, Carolina has one loss. They've lost to Notre Dame, and they've already tied up. They won the Coastal Division of the ACC,
Okay.
and they're gonna play in the title game against Clemson. And if they both stay undefeated the rest of the season until they meet, their only loss for both of them would have been against Notre Dame, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So I'm looking forward. They're talking about him now, at least coming to the Heisman, ceremony in New York. And although he's a redshirt freshman, he's like in the top 5 in all of those categories I just mentioned. I think nationally, he's put on quite a year. And given you never know what's going to happen with some of those other teams that are being considered for the playoffs now. But if Carolina goes, they have Georgia Tech and NC State. There's 2 probably the biggest games left on their schedule. But they somehow win out the rest of their games, they might be in the picture for the playoffs. With one loss, it's gonna be hard to not look at them if somebody stumbles ahead of them.
Yeah, it's hard because I don't. Other than what you're saying, I'm just wondering if they have enough strength of schedule.
Yeah, that might be the only problem.
Because you got to figure, for instance, without looking at anything else, if there's an SEC team with 1 loss and North Carolina got 1 loss.
No question.
Yeah, and if that one team is Georgia or Tennessee.
Right. Yeah. Well, I figure Georgia's gonna be in it, regardless of what happens.
Well, no, I'm just saying that because like if Georgia gets upset in the SEC conference, they're going and assuming I don't think Georgia's going to lose before the conference championship. So if they lose, they're still going to get a shot.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's all. And I actually think the team that's sitting pretty right now is Tennessee because they're in the same division as Georgia. So if Tennessee runs the table, but they won't play in the conference championship, they got a good chance of still getting a bid.
That's true.
So that's the type of team that might push a North Carolina out.
North Carolina out. That's true. That's right.
And then if North Carolina beats Clemson, that's really will help them, except that would be Clemson's second loss.
Right.
So it still would be a quality win, but it wouldn't be like that was Clemson's only loss. So
that's true. That's true.
But they got a shot because other things could happen though. Other things could happen.
It's an outside chance. That's for sure. Yeah.
But you put him on the map a few weeks ago.
I'll ignore stats like that, man.
Yeah, you put him on the map. So he has to get. They have what are the final 3, 4, or 5 guys go to New York, but it's based on how they finished in the ballot or how they're projected to finish.
Right.
I think that's how it goes. So when they get the invites, I think they already know the top 3 or 4. You just don't know who wins because they announce it at the actual ceremony. So, but he's getting a late push.
Yeah.
So and if he doesn't, he probably won't win it this year, but he'll probably be one of the leading candidates next year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think so. And the other thing I mentioned is UCLA trying to kill their season by losing to Arizona.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was it. You can forget about that probably.
Yeah.
But they have to play SC still, USC, in a couple of weeks. So that's still gonna be a big game. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and that was UCLA's second loss.
Yeah, they lost to Oregon. Yeah, before that, that's right.
You know, the society's become so playoff centric now. You forget about all the things that have meant something like conference titles and
right.
You know, that type of thing, and so you almost don't even pay attention anymore to where a team might be because, you know, the Rose Bowl is still considered prestigious for the Pac, even though the Pac-12 is going to not be anymore once UCLA and USC leave, but or at least in the way we know it.
Right.
So UCLA has 2 conference losses, so they're probably not in the running for.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I guess Oregon and SC are still having outside hopes of getting into the college playoff.
Right.
So if one of those teams found a way in, the other one would probably end up in the Rose Bowl unless you.
True.
So you're right. UCLA's at least Rose Bowl hopes probably took a big dive.
Big hit. I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
But then that's right. Wait a minute. I misspoke about Oregon. I'm sorry. Eliminate Oregon. Oregon lost to Washington this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. They did.
So they're done with the national thing. So they're Oregon's like UCLA now for the Rose Bowl.
Right.
And I guess since Oregon beat UCLA head up, so they would have that tiebreaker.
Absolutely.
But then I don't know where Washington is with that then, because Washington only has 2 losses. I forget who they lost to. So anyway, we went down the rabbit hole on that one. So
TCU is still hanging in there.
TCU still hanging in there. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. You know.
Yeah. So.
But that's about it on the college scene for me this week, anyway.
Well, it's getting to be tonight. They're going to have the college football playoff rankings coming out, and there was some a number of upsets last weekend.
Right.
And so there'll definitely be some shuffling. Georgia will remain at the top, but Ohio State, Michigan will probably be the top 3. But Clemson lost last weekend. There was a couple other teams in the top 10, I believe, lost last weekend. And so, but you're right, the top 3 will be Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan.
Right.
And TCU would be 4. Yeah, you're right. So
it should be. Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Yeah. I want to jump into the Hall of Fame. What I will always call it the Veterans Committee, even though they call it the Era Committees now.
Right.
And so in the first week, I believe the first week of December, there'll be 8 folks on the ballot to have a chance to get into Cooperstown.
Right.
Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Rafael Palmeiro, Kurt Schilling, Albert Bell, Fred McGriff, Don Mattingly, and Dale Murphy. And they've revamped. For the audience, I won't get into the revamping, other than the fact that of the 16 voters, and you still have to be named on 75% of the ballots, so you have to be named on 12 of the 16 ballots minimum. They only can vote on a maximum of 3 players.
Right.
So it's going to be very difficult for more than one to get in if they get that. So I'm going to be really interested to see what's going to happen with those who, for lack of a better term, has been tainted. Some with PED rumors, others with racial issues. That's Kurt Schilling. Some of the, that, or being considered a really right-wing person that supposedly has pissed some people off. I don't buy that necessarily in terms of the voters. I don't think it's mattered to the voters. I think that was an excuse that he and his supporters used.
I think so too.
And
he
then
didn't measure up.
Right, he just did. He really good career. He'll probably eventually one day get in.
Yeah.
But the fact that he got as high as 70% on the writers' ballot for him to say was because of his politics.
Right.
And then there are others say, well, he's made some comments that had a racial tinge to it.
Right.
But I just think he just, he'll be the guy that'll eventually get in one day, whether you like him or not. Yeah. And then the other guy that, even though he didn't do anything to anybody other than the fact the writers didn't like him, was Albert Bell.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be really interesting because of the other three on the ballot, McGriff, Mattingly, and Murphy, they all seem to be well liked. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Of course, I don't like that well liked thing. I don't think that should ever matter.
It should have everything to do with it. Right?
It should have anything to do with it, but unfortunately it does. So,
but it does. We know it does. Yeah, all the time.
But what I will say, final comments on this is that this will probably give us a window into those who have been rumored with the PED stuff about whether or not they'll ever get into Cooperstown, at least in the immediate future, because with three of them on the ballot, if none of them gets in, then it may tell you everything you need to know. And then I'll double down. If none of those three get in, and anybody like McGriff or Mattingly or Murphy get in, it really tells you something.
That's true. That's true.
And I can't even prognosticate, because if they go with just stats, Barry Bonds and Clemens, clearly, you know. And I'd hate to speculate after that, but if there's a move that nobody wants to support those that are supposedly tainted, then I would think McGriff would have the best shot. 493 homers and world champion and over 1,500 ribbies, the whole nine. So we'll see. What do you think?
Well, I think, I agree with everything you said. I can't add anything to that. And I think it would be egregious if those, the Bonds and the Clemens don't get in, and somebody like a McGriff is overlooked or Bell is overlooked, and you get Mattingly and Murphy and those kind of guys getting in, which could very likely happen, which I would expect might happen.
That's a good point. Yes.
Given the racial history of this country, basically, is in everything. So it certainly is in the voting. It has been throughout the years. Because of the litany, you wrote a book about all the guys who've been left out in the Hall of Fame, who should have been in there years ago, and all the black ball players, great black ball players. So, I don't think Bell and McGriff will get any more serious consideration than they got when they were on the regular ballot. I'd be shocked. I hope I'm pleasantly surprised. But,
I'm pleasantly surprised, but I think you hit it right on time.
I don't expect it at all.
And that would really reinforce all of the concerns we've raised and discussed. Right. That if Mattingly or Murphy, and again, it's nothing against them personally, they were really good ball players. But if either one of them get in over these other guys, and that tells you everything you need to know, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say related to this is we probably already have seen where they might go, in that Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire are not on this ballot.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah.
And they both have been tainted, and Sosa even more than McGwire's.
Of course. Sosa was a much better ball player.
I mean, it's over 600 home, the whole everything. MVP, all the ribbies, stolen bases.
Exactly.
The whole
much
bit.
All-around ball player.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't be there. And, McGwire was a pure power hitter.
Right.
And you would elevate McGwire over Murphy, for instance, among other people. But so we've probably already gotten a window into how the voting is probably going to take place. The fact that both McGwire and more so Sosa were not screened onto the ballot. So
that's true.
We'll see. We'll have time to talk about the results of this come December and see what's what. You want to talk a little bit about the midterms, man? Concluded
just a little,
a week ago.
I'm glad that the Democrats held on to the Senate, even without Walker and Warnock being decided yet, and phony system they have down there in Georgia, where you get a second bite of the apple even though you lost. Well, I tell you, these six, they go through every trick they can to get what they want, and so I hope Warnock is successful in the runoff between Walker and. But I'm glad, like I said, glad they held on to the Senate. They're going to lose the House, it looks like. Well, they may have already lost it. And one of the key things that's happening, there's a thing going on in New York State where the Democrats lost a lot of seats in the Congress because they're running these centrist candidates against these right-wing Republicans, as opposed to running more progressive candidates. And the Democratic Party in New York and in the country in general seems to be at war with the progressive wing, and that just hurts the party overall, rather than supporting people who really have been the base of what the Democratic Party is supposed to stand for. You know, the working man and all that kind of stuff. They're just trying to vie for the same votes that these Republicans vie for, these, you know, right-wing conservative voters, rather than pumping up their base and going after their base and putting up candidates who represent their base. And I think that's why they're losing the House, because losing seats in a state like New York. You know, you expect them to lose in other places for the gerrymandering and all that stuff. But to lose the number of seats they lost in New York is just egregious. And then, you know, that warfare between Democrats has to stop. It really does.
Yeah, and I think you raise a great point. And I think this whole centrist Democrat or centrist anything is problematic in a world that needs proactive, progressive thinking out of the box, because there's so many issues to that need to be addressed and problems that need to be mitigated.
Absolutely.
And you have this old guard democratic thinking. And see, one of the things we have to come to grips with is that thinking is not new. And that, you know, this whole notion, we've been saying it probably for a generation only because it followed, or a couple of generations because it followed LBJ's time in office, about, you know, Republican light, the Democratic Party. You know, Bill Clinton, Republican light, meaning that, you know, go back a few years, and a lot of things that have been pushed by Clinton and these centrist Democrats would have been considered Republican policies just a generation or two ago. And they've mainstreamed them. They make progressive folks be the outcasts. And this is what we get. And, you know, so that on top of, and you write about New York, you know, you would have thought that shouldn't have happened if the Democrats were on their game. And then you briefly mentioned it. The other reason for the losses is gerrymandering, because over the last 10, 12, 15 years, when they do these studies of the actual vote totals for Congress and whatever, the Democrats consistently get anywhere from 53 to 55% of the total vote. But yet, you know, the number of times they have not held not only the House, but, you know, they generally don't have a majority of the state legislatures, and that's because of gerrymandering.
There you go.
So between gerrymandering and voter suppression and voter intimidation, it's a wonder they came as close as they did to retaining the House.
That's true. That was very true.
So it just shows you there's a lot wrong with the system, but it was intended that way, man.
Oh, no question about that. It's not an accident. Not an accident.
You go all the way back to what they like to call the founding fathers, and the 2 senators per state. And now look what we're faced with. Vermont got barely 1 million people. They get 2 senators. California got over 40 million people. We get 2 senators.
We want to talk about Wyoming.
I was getting ready. Montana-wise, and those are actually better examples.
North Dakota,
South Dakota.
Yeah, that kind of crap.
And then places like New York, and you know, and so it just shows you. So it's not a representative democracy.
Not at all.
But it wasn't intended to be. It wasn't intended to be.
It was intended to be a country controlled by a rich white man.
That's right. That's why women couldn't vote until 1920.
There you go.
That's why black folks are still having trouble voting.
That's right. The system is working.
The system is working the way it was designed.
That's it.
And so they're going to have to, people who are going to oppose the way this thing is working or not working for the everyday citizen are going to have to come up with new strategies.
Right, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to Michael Moore.
Okay.
Michael Moore predicted that there would not be a red tsunami.
Yeah, he did.
He has his pulse on the country better than the pundits and the broadcasters and all these major networks. Yeah. So shout out to Michael Moore. Good guy. Good brother. Yeah.
Well, we heard today before we came on the air that the Russians reportedly, well, there was a bomb that came from Russian airplanes into Poland and killed 2 people. And the first report I heard was that it was an accident. I don't know if you've heard anything different.
Yeah, no, I heard the same thing. It was supposedly an accident because they were shelling. Poland's border somewhere. So it's one of those things that happens when wars take place and people are dropping bombs and they don't know where they all fall. You know,
right.
The tragic thing. The whole thing is a tragic mess.
Yeah, it is.
The tragic mess that's taking place on this planet, and all that are preventable, which just makes it even more egregious. Yeah. So no telling where that's going to end.
Yeah, and the media are going to play it up with all the, and when I say that, not to say that it's not serious, but you'll get for the next couple of days, everybody will start speculating on NATO and what Biden should do and what does this mean? Is Armageddon on the way? And and I think the only reason I have issues with all of that is that it continues this speculation of fear mongering. Not that stuff is not serious, but they just take it into overdrive.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Well, you got anything else, man?
No, that's about it for the week, I think. Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to cover.
Yeah, we're getting ready for the Thanksgiving holidays.
Yeah, take a little break there.
Take a little break. Yeah, maybe we'll do this again maybe in a couple of weeks.
Right.
For those who are following us.
Right on.
For what that might be, but we're gonna get there.
Absolutely.
I will throw a couple of quick hits out there before we get off of here.
Okay.
For the soccer fans out there, and I know a lot of people during the World Cup maybe are casual fans. It starts when we get back on the air. They will be through part of the first round or group play, I should say.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. There are always some of the same top teams like Brazil and Spain and of course, I'm always want to see how the teams from Africa is going to do.
Right.
And so we'll get a chance to maybe see a couple of games and talk about it. And I know your man Embiid, I saw he scored 59 points over the weekend.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I'm curious to find out how many 3-point shots he took. I don't think he took many. Because I saw some clips of the game, and everything was inside the arc where he should be playing, in my opinion. So... yeah, good shout out to Embiid. I'm not surprised. I think he's capable of doing that quite often if he wanted to. Quite a display. He's a tremendously talented ball player.
Yeah. I saw the Lakers won their third game of the season. They did it without LeBron.
Isn't that something?
The other day.
Beat the Nets.
Beat the Nets. Yeah. Of course, the Nets didn't have Kyrie or Ben Simmons or Seth Curry, so.
Right.
I guess it's some
watered down version of the Nets.
Watered down, yeah.
That's true.
But I will, we talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at this Laker team, man, they're 3-10. They can't shoot. They can't defend.
Right.
And then we go back. They won the title in the 2020 season, 2019-2020, even though I know because of COVID, it was like, I don't know what, October of 2020. That's why it doesn't seem that long ago, because it actually wasn't, even though this is the third season since then starting. And we talked about it then when right after they won a title, they didn't re-sign Dwight Howard. They traded JaVale McGee, and what was the big issue there? They got rid of their size. That was one of the biggest advantages they had. They had size. And then they also could play perimeter defense the following season. And then also let Rondo go, which they, leadership.
Right.
Then the following season, when they went and traded for Westbrook, Kuzma was gone, Caldwell Pope was gone, two of their better defensive perimeter players.
Right.
And then they couldn't re-sign Caruso, who was another good perimeter player.
Absolutely.
So in 2 seasons, and actually just 1 calendar year after that championship, they got rid of their size and their perimeter defenders, bringing in either guy that didn't fit in Westbrook, nothing against Westbrook, he's had a great career. But the thing that always blew me away, what was the narrative when they let go of Howard and traded McGee? They signed Marc Gasol.
Right.
And Marc Gasol's had a good NBA career, but he's long in the tooth. And what did they say? Former Defensive Player of the Year, which he should have never won. And he was going to replace Howard and McGee.
Howard.
And by the time they played in the, I don't know if it was a playoff or it was playoff against Phoenix. He was basically on the bench.
Right.
So I say all that to say they dismantled their own team. And I know you off the air had the query about who's responsible. I don't know if you want to take a real quick stab before we get off the air.
Yeah, but like they always say that LeBron is involved in the decisions and his team and the general manager. So it's just be interesting to know who pulled the final trigger on those decisions. Mm-hmm. And as you said, they always try to blame the ball players for everything that goes wrong. So the bottom line is that the general manager and the owners have the final say. So it's really up to them.
That's it. They have the final say. They can't have it both ways.
Right.
They can't. It can't be them, and they can't be the geniuses when they win.
Right.
And then it's the players when they don't. Because that's all it is. It's the same as we talk about the quarterback and the wide receivers. It's the same thing that plays out all over the place.
Right. Absolutely.
When they win, the GMs, which are overwhelmingly don't look like me or you, they're geniuses.
Right. That's true.
And so, yeah. All right, brother. Well, once again, this has been illuminating, interesting, instructive. Can I find something else that starts with I?
Right. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure. So, man, we're going to do this again in a couple of weeks. You have a very healthy, happy, and safe holiday season, you and your family.
Same to you and yours, brother.
I appreciate it. And we're going to wish that to our listening audience, and we'll do this again.
Absolutely, brother.
All right, man. Take care of that part of the world.
I'll do my best. You do the same.
I will. Take care.